Good evening, everyone. How are you? This is Enrique Sanchez, Spanish United. Tonight, we have a very special guest on the show, which would be kind enough to introduce your audience, please.
Hi, this is Mayor Kevin McNamee, the city
Well,
of Thousand Oaks.
welcome, Mayor. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes, as we spoke through email and through phone calls, I am interested about how the city is doing in terms of Hispanic contributions, and how the city is doing in general. So. One of the questions I would like to start with you would be, what are Hispanic contributions to the city of Thousand Oaks?
The city of Thousand Oaks is 127,000 people. We have a very strong city staff that helps provide support services such as filling potholes in the street and keeping the street lights on. But more importantly, we provide a quality of life so that way people can come here and raise a family. So the families can walk in the streets with the nice safety that our police department provides. We have very low crime here. We also have a very responsive police and fire. We have a great relationship with our first responders, and that's the primary focus of having a civil society and a wonderful place to live. Our city has discreetly and strategically placed parks throughout the city so that way families can go and enjoy the outdoors and picnic or anything that they wish to do. We also have the access to the Santa Monica Mountains with reserve space that families go and walk, hike, bike ride their horses. So the emphasis is in quality of life here, and many people come here to Thousand Oaks for that quality of life. So regarding the folks that are here that are Hispanic, is that the folks that I know that are Hispanic, they're usually very family oriented.
Mm.
They honor their debts. They're a cash and carry group of people who are very hardworking, entrepreneurial in nature, where they want to open businesses and or be great employees to keep a roof over their head, food on the table, and raise a family and enjoy life. And we provide the amenities for families to have that type of an environment. So as far as their contributions, we've got a wonderful population of about 13 to 15% of our city is Hispanic, and they are just part of the wonderful fabric in our community, where you don't define yourself as being a certain ethnic group and you're separate. You are part of the overall fabric of our community. You're integrated into what we have here in our diverse society here in Thousand Oaks.
Because for me, it's very important as a civil rights activist, for the advocate for the Hispanic people. My job is to ensure the safety and the well-being of the Hispanic community, regardless of their immigrant born or American born, and to make sure that they are represented in the communities that they live in, because Hispanics, as you say, we're hardworking people, and we have family orientated. But in my view, Hispanics tend to be invisible, even though we are part of the economy. And when it comes to our representation, when it comes to our needs, I feel that in many cases, it doesn't matter what political spectrum it is, they're not being met. So I feel that I'm being the voice for the Hispanic community to speak the concerns that they have, that maybe they are afraid or may not know how to address it, and to bring it before the audience, like with you, for example. And one of the things, that I always educate the people in my organization foundation is the importance of education, because unfortunately Hispanics do not come from a culture that emphasizes education. Is more of a peon culture, and the problem is that they pass that on to their children, and many of them, for many reasons, don't want to do that, and they don't have the education, and they get into trouble. So one of the things, that I would like to ask you is, education, preparing your child for success in life, what the parent can do to get the child ready to learn, what to do at home, parent involvement. So like, I want to ask you that question first.
That's a good question. You asked basically two separate questions there. Which one do you want to go with?
The first one I want to ask about preparing the child for life and what the parent can do to make the child prepared for them to learn.
Excellent question. The Hispanics that we have in our community, and again, I really do not like to separate people by their race in our community. They're all part of the Thousand Oaks family. But one of the things that families, regardless of their racial background, who are not understanding the steps in education, because education is an invitation to be more. And the role of the parent is to provide the skills for that child to survive and thrive as they grow up and become an adult in our community, to provide a product or service. And in turn, they can have a roof over their head, food on their table, and raise a family. So some of the things that parents should do and need to do as the child grows from birth to 5 years of age, one of the greatest gifts the parent can give the child is to teach them how to read the alphabet, the sounds of the letters, putting those letters together to create words and sentences. Because when you do that, it opens up a whole new world for that child in school. And what has been shown that the parent can do at home is to, if they can't teach the child how to read, find someone who can. So by the time they're 5, 6 years old, they're already reading. Because what's been found is that child is not reading by 4th, 5th grade as the academics moves towards more reading as compared to visual in the 1st, 2nd grade. Mm-hmm. That child will drop out of school, join gangs, become a gang member and involved in crime. Mm-hmm. And that's not what we want. If you want to reduce our prison population, stop gangs, teach the child to read. That's the first step. Mm-hmm. Second step is when they are in school. Number one, you need to have the parent involved with the child's progress at school. Mm-hmm. So when the child is not doing well, the teacher is able to reach out to the parent. Second is the parent needs to be part of the parent-teacher day where the parent shows up, talks to the teacher as to what's expected of their child and what they can do at home to support what is being taught. Third is that you need a quiet environment for that child to study and do their homework. Shut off the TV, shut off the stereo, make certain the kids aren't playing and that everyone's doing their homework. After the homework's done, step number 4 is the parent should check the homework to make certain it's complete. Even if they don't speak English or read English, are all the blanks filled? And if they have someone like a neighbor who's bilingual and can read English and verbally communicate with the child, do so. Bring in that teenager in the neighborhood. Bring in that neighbor next door that's an adult who can look at the homework. And then step 5 is make certain that child turns in that homework. Because more often than not, the child who's not doing well in school, the homework's not completed, it's too noisy at home to study, they don't turn the homework in or it's not complete. And then when the child, number 6, is that the parent should stay on top of exams that the child is taking to see how are they doing? Are they falling short? Are they getting D's, C's, or F's? This is not a place where you want your child to be because every child starts off at the same spot when they're coming to this world. It's how you nurture that brain and the behavior of that child from birth until 18 years of age. And the big ages are birth to 5, 6 years old. And from that point forward, parent just needs to be involved and gently encourage them. Celebrate when they get a good grade on an exam. And when they don't, find out why from the teacher and the child. What could we do better at home to help them do better in school? Mm-hmm. Because when I go to teach at Ventura College in the water science department, I often comment that my class is usually 60%. Again, I hate this term, but they're students of color. Mm-hmm. And a third of the entire class should go back to 9th grade and start all over again because they were passed. Mm-hmm. Pastor Sam Gallucci in Oxnard has 5 students who are 14 years of age who have gone through the Oxnard School District who are illiterate. They cannot read. These are students who were born here in this country to parents who did not speak English, but they were passed through in the Oxnard public school system, and they are illiterate at 14 years of age. Now, what future do these children have in life if they cannot read? It is so fundamental. So he's working with those students to get them to move forward. And give you an example of my effort. is last November, I gave a presentation for about 2 hours to Hispanic parents and teenagers about study skills, what to do, everything from flashcards, outlining, quizzing each other, getting a study buddy, parents making certain they're on top of the student, using highlighters to highlight certain words in their reading material. All those things come together to make a student a better student to learn the material, because students learn in 4 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
First, it's visual. They see something. Second is audio. Do they hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Instructions. Third is kinesthetic. Get out there and physically doing it with their hands. And fourth is read, write, where they read the material, write down, outline what that just said.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell my students, verbalize it. When you read a paragraph, say in your own words what you just read, or get with a study buddy, and your parents could be your study buddy. Ask them to quiz them on what the material was that they just studied. And by doing Q&A back and forth, now the student can articulate it and know it, because filling in bubbles on a multiple choice test really does not reinforce and guarantee that the student understood it.
Right.
All they're doing is word association.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal with all my students is to treat them all equally, challenge them to be the best they can. Unfortunately, not every kid is meant to get A's in a class. Right. But they should get the grades they deserve, right, and help them become a better student in the class. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I also wanted to add one of the things that I always say, that the teachers and the students and the parents and the board directors have to work together. The problem that I see with the school system in general is that nobody wants to work together. Like, number one, it is not the parents' job to make sure that their kids are getting educated while they're in school, and it's not the teacher's job to make sure that the kids are doing the homework at school. They have to be accountable to each other. That's one. Right. Number two, that when the child is failing, the teacher doesn't want to take responsibility. They always put it, it's on the parents. The parents want to take responsibility. It's the teachers. And then ultimately it goes before the principal, and then the principal says you're both wrong. So when you have all sides putting the blame game, the one that really gets harmed is the child, is the student. And that's the reason why a lot of them are failing. Like, I have seen, when I was going through the public high school system many years ago, when I was a kid, when they used to have junior high, they don't have junior high anymore, that I think this really needs to change, because I think this would help a lot in getting the teachers to make sure that they graduate. Is that many teachers, especially in the public school system, have a lukewarm attitude towards the students. It's like, if you graduate, great. You don't graduate, great either, because I get my pension. So the only way that that's going to change is that every time a student doesn't fail, you penalize the teacher. You reduce their pension little by little, to a point that they're going to say, hey, I'm not going to get my pension. So it's going to motivate the teachers to make the students graduate, because a lot of teachers have become very comfortable in their position, to the point that they don't even care. They become cynical and narcissistic.
And Ricky, can I share a concept with you, if I may, from a professor's standpoint?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
When I talk to the elementary school and high school teachers, there's something at the beginning of the school year called Parent Teacher Day.
Right.
And the ones that show up, the parents that show up to find out from the teacher what is expected of their child and how can I support my child at home to make certain they master the material, are the 20% that do very well in school. Mm-hmm. It's the other 80% where the parents don't show up. Now, I came from a family of 7 brothers and sisters. Mom and dad showed up at every parent teacher day every year at school, and they were in constant communication, number 2, with the teachers. If we are not doing well in a certain subject, mom and dad checked our exams coming home. In fact, we had to have them sign it and turn it back into the teacher to make certain the parents are aware of what's going on. It's become more sophisticated today, where you have the internet and students' grades are posted where the parent can get to it. Mm-hmm. Now, you raise the question, are the parents sophisticated enough? Do they have a computer at home to access that information? But my point being is that the parents need to show up at Parent Teacher Day, need to be on their child to say, okay, show me that exam that you had yesterday. What score did you get? Oh my God, you didn't get a good score. I'm going to talk to the teacher to find out what we need to do here at the house. And you are going to do well. Let's start studying the subject. So the motivation has to come from home, from the parent to say, we expect an expectation is high, and let the child shoot for that expectation. Right. And what I found in my classes in college level is you ask for excellence of the student, they will give you excellence, and they will beam when they meet that goal. And they will become a whole new person, because now they've got this. I now can become a good student and learn a skill that will carry me for the rest of my life.
Absolutely. I agree with you. It starts from home, but at the same time, like I said, there needs to be accountability on the
teacher side.
On the teacher side, because like I said, teachers, they treat every student, especially like you say, students of color, as trash. You know, I've seen it personally. I never experienced it personally myself, but I've seen it.
Let me share a thought with you on another solution that to consider, Enrique, because you sound like me as a person who's looking for a solution to make lives better for people in general, regardless of their racial background. One of the challenges that I found with the government-run schools is that the teachers union make it very difficult to remove those teachers who are not performing, that are 2 years from retirement, and they're tired of teaching for 30 years. And they come into class, they open up the newspaper, just say it's study hall, and then pass everybody with A's. So parents think, okay, everything's good. But in fact, the students didn't learn anything in that class other than a study hall. You follow my thought?
Right.
So the challenge is, how do you remove a teacher who's not doing their job anymore for various reasons? That's the challenge, because the unions are there to keep that teacher in class and then defend it for 5-10 years. So let me share with you a model that may work, and I want your feedback on this, as well as perhaps your listeners.
Be my guest.
There's a talk of an initiative to where the money does not go directly to the government-run schools. The money goes into a education savings account at the state level of $15,000 per year, kindergarten through 12th grade. That's what's called Proposition 98 money. That we have very generous people here in California that value education, and a certain percentage of the budget needs to go to education. That winds up right now being $15,000 per year, and it goes up a little bit each year as our economy in California grows.
Right.
Well, what this initiative is being talked about is that a child gets in that savings account $15,000 every year. The parent then is able to select between the government-run schools, a parochial religious school, a private school, or homeschooling. Whatever is the best fit for their child, the parent chooses, as compared to a government administrator, bureaucrat, central planner saying you've got to go down to the street to the inferior school that's got gang-ridden and drug-infested, and your kid is not going to learn because they're going to get passed along just because they want to keep their totals of kids graduating up. So now the parent has the choice to find the best fit for their child. So the parent enrolls them at let's say the parochial school down the street that charges $7,000 per year, kindergarten through 8th grade. So then the school contacts the state, says, this child is going to my school, release out of that fund $7,000 for tuition. The remaining $8,000 stays in that savings account that rolls over year after year after year. So by the time they hit 8th grade, there's $72,000 sitting in that state savings account. So now let's say the parent says, all right, we got to select a high school. Well, you know what? We don't want to send our child to the government-run public school because it's a problem. It's an inferior education. My child would do better at this private high school that's $20,000 a year. So the child, freshman year, gets $15,000 from the state, but then the parent can draw from that $72,000, $5,000 to make the 20. So now that child is getting a private education at the high school. After 4 years, graduates a senior, that education savings account now has $52,000 for trade tech, community college, 4-year university, or post-grad up until age 30. So now you've eliminated student loan debt. If the student is smart and goes to community college the first 2 years, which is very inexpensive and a high quality education, now they've got a good chunk of money for the last 2 years of college.
Mhm.
Now, that to me is opportunity because, again, a central planner or a government bureaucrat is not telling your child where to go.
Right.
The parent is making that choice to find the best fit. And there's a competing market out there where the parochial religious schools and the private schools and homeschoolings are all competing to provide the best education at the lowest price, because the reward to the parent is to have money there after senior year in high school for trade tech, community college, four-year university, or post-grad.
Mhm.
Now, Enrique, this is brilliant because right now we have the largest monopoly in the United States are our government-run public schools.
Mhm.
And it's the reason that you just pointed out is because a teacher who does a superior job is not rewarded for doing a superior job. So they all lower themselves to the lowest common denominator to just be over average. So that way they don't have any reprimand or retribution for being a
Mhm.
poor teacher, but it's not serving that child.
No.
Now, does this make sense to you, Enrique?
No, it's perfect. It makes a lot of perfect sense. I've actually heard from this model before, and I actually did an interview a year ago about this. It's based on the Singapore model. I'm not sure if you heard that model before.
I'm not familiar with Singapore model, but share.
Yeah,
with me.
the Singapore model, it creates I'm tongue tied, a curriculum to reach the level of math, academics, and subjects according to not just the standard of the country, but the standard of the world. Because you know
Yep.
that every country has to compete with other countries that are advanced. So Singapore came up with that model that to come up with ways that they could get all students, not just at the levels of the country, but also at the levels of other countries. And Singapore is a highly developed country. So, you know, they mention about, you know, putting money into like a special fund, like kind of like a wealth management fund, because I used to work in financial services years ago, where from that little piggy bank, you know, money trickles down, and that, you know, gives money to all the other people. I think that's an alternative.
Yep.
And I also feel that there should be choices, because I feel that a lot of parents don't have choices. And again, a lot of parents that do care about their children want their kids to go to private school. They just cannot afford it. So I think this is an alternative that it's feasible, and at the same time it's going to benefit both societies, because when you have a child that's educated and gets a better paying job, they contribute in taxes, and that taxes goes into revenue, and the revenue spreads to everybody else. And I think it's a win-win situation. And I feel that Hispanics who are the largest workforce in the country could benefit from that. But again, a lot of it has to start from home. And at the same time, that there needs to be accountability on both the parents' part and on the students' part, because when they don't work together, or they're like indifferent, it just creates problems. Because like you said, the United States is only 5% of the world's population, but we have a quarter of the world's mass incarceration. We have more people incarcerated in the United States than in communist China, which has 1 billion plus people. And I say to myself, how can that be? But again, it starts when the child is being formed. And like you said, the first 5 years of a child's life is not just teaching them about reading and visual comprehension. It's also how you behave and speak, with your children. Because the first
you hit it spot on the target. I spent
Right.
3 months. I've spent 3 months in communist China after I completed my training in acupuncture and chiropractic school.
Mhm.
And what I found there was that there's a culture of do not embarrass the family outside the house. You better behave. And then the government is also one that if you do misbehave and doing crimes, there's severe punishment for it. But
Oh, I
also
know.
the embarrassment to the family, because the family doesn't want to, what the term used is they don't want to lose face, to
Right.
be embarrassed to everybody else. So culturally, yes, that's one of the big emphasis is that child, you better behave outside the house, because I don't want to hear that you were misbehaving and you
Right.
got yourself in trouble, because there's major repercussions happening at home when you get home.
Right. And the problem is a lot of Hispanics, a lot of them tend to be very harsh disciplinarians, but they don't tell them why. It's like, you know, you better follow the rules or else, but they're not like explaining why. And
Yeah.
that's part of the reasons why a lot of Hispanic youth get into trouble, because a lot of them come from very abusive homes where the father's an alcoholic, the parents are gang members, and they're being mistreated both by their parents, by society, and by the police.
So what happens as the child grows up and the only culture they know is that same abusive environment, either verbally or physically? So I hear you. Just as another thought that we have gotten away from in our culture, the American culture, is a work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
In that parents think they do their child a favor by allowing them not to work and let them be a child as long as they can. I started working when I was 12 years of age. My mom saw me sitting around watching too much TV. She found a woman that needed to have the garden tended to because the gardener she had was not going through and pulling the weeds that needed to be pulled out of this massive bush. So I went over and I, for 3-4 weeks in a row, pulled weeds and got paid for it. But I would ride my bike, 3-4 miles to get to the home to do the garden, use their equipment, walked away very proud that lawn looked a lot better as well as all the growth. But I had money in my pocket, opened up a savings account with my mom, and I began learning about financial literacy, about a savings account and how interest grows, how you put some money aside to go out and do fun stuff, but put 90% of it into the savings account and let it grow. So what we've done here is I had, for example, a patient in my practice was saying how she doesn't know what to do, that her son who graduated from USC, all he wants to do is drive around the family SUV talking on his cell phone, stays up to 2 a.m. doing video games with people around the world on the internet, and she can't get him to work. And I said to her, asked her this open question, what was the first job he ever had and how old was he? Oh, she probably said, well, he's never had to work. And I said, why? She says, I wanted him to be a child and enjoy as long as he could. And I said, the only thing you've got now is a child in an adult's body. A work ethic does not flip a switch and suddenly they want to go out and work. The biggest enjoyment I have is doing a job well done and walking home with a paycheck in my pocket to spend the way I want. I never from that point forward put my hand out to my mother and father to buy something. I saved up and bought my first car at 16, paid for all the insurance and gas and repairs myself from that point forward, because that was the deal with my parents, that I would not ask them for help. And I worked on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, during the summer full time, and that carried me through until I got into college, which I continued that same pattern. So we have, again, children that should be out there working in minimum wage jobs as an entry-level job and develop a work ethic that will carry them for the rest of their life. So that will keep them out of gangs, keep them productive. They must do well in school, because if they don't, then we're going to emphasize studying, because obviously you're spending too much time working and not getting good grades.
Right.
So there's the balance. School comes first, work comes second.
I agree with you.
Does that make sense, Enrique?
That makes perfect sense. And I feel that will be beneficial for the Hispanic community, because unfortunately there's a saying that goes, Asians push their kids too much, Hispanics don't push their kids enough. And I think that's the problem. Hispanics, unfortunately, they just want to enjoy life so much, partying, getting drunk, and enjoying life. But again, they're not focusing on the important things. Like a lot of Hispanics also complain, getting to also part of the question is about savings, because a lot of Hispanics claim, oh, I would like to do a lot of things, but I'm broke, I don't have money. So I don't get it. Like how I see many Hispanics in particular, that they will magically come up with a way. Okay. All right. It says that it's going to finish in 10 seconds. If we get
Or
disconnected.
10 minutes, actually.
10 minutes.
You got. Yeah.
So in case we can't finish everything, I'll send you another link to complete it.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I've seen with many Hispanic people, families, that they complain, oh, we don't have money for a lot of things. Okay, that's understandable. But I asked myself, where do they get the money to throw a quinceañera, which is not cheap, for just one day? and then they don't have enough, for the rest of the month. That's one thing. Number two, where do a lot of Hispanic, especially Hispanic men, get the money to put rims on a lowrider car, hydraulics, making the car bounce, but yet they complain they don't have money to put for their kids' college fund. So I ask myself, where is their priorities? It's like one thing that I see in every Hispanic city or area in the entire United States, not just in California, is that you see a lot of places of vice, a lot of liquor stores around the corner, smoke shops, pornography centers, marijuana dispensaries in the case of California. You go to other places that are predominantly white or Asian, Jewish, or any other ethnicity, you will not see that. And I ask myself, why is it that Hispanic people, they complain for nonsense things, but yet when they have to complain about things that's killing their community, they're not doing it? Like, I'm seeing more Hispanic families bury their sons, while I see Korean and Indian parents sending their kids to college at the expense of Hispanic kids and adults that are giving their money to these people that don't even like them to send their kids to school, while we're having to bury our kids prematurely. So
Let me share a thought with you, Enrique. Let's talk about the market.
Sure.
If there was not a market in the communities you just described that want marijuana shops, liquor stores, so forth, they would go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Because that store is there doesn't mean that it's going to survive. It survives because the people there want that kind of a product or service. Whereas if you drop that same shop into other communities that don't value and don't participate in excessive drinking, drug addiction, marijuana use, so forth, they would go out of business because the community would not use it. When I was in China, they did not have a drug problem.
No, of course not.
Because one, the government had many, many severe penalties for drug users and drugs dealers.
Mm-hmm.
But also, as the translators explained to me, it's not part of our culture. We do not get our enjoyment in life out of the chemical feel good that these alcohol, marijuana, other drugs give us. We need to train our children that you get the feel good of helping your neighbor, getting a good grade in class, hitting that baseball over the fence, helping mom and dad around the house with chores. That's where your feel good should come from. Not going out to the local liquor store and getting drunk because other neighbors are doing it. That comes from discipline in the home and what the values that should be held. That's the direction we should be in. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
So I'm looking forward to, again, I'm going to be doing a financial literacy class again in Oxnard to talk about those things, because you illustrated the demand as to what is more important, the rims on that new car that has hydraulic lifts, or the hair being done at $200 every 2 weeks, or the nails being done. When I teach my college classes and the students complain they have no money, and I look at them and they have beautiful, beautiful nails done. They've got a perm. They have top designer clothes on. They have a Starbucks coffee cup in their hand. But yet, if you look at all those it costs, oh, and the other one is they don't bring a sack lunch to school. They're buying their lunch at the local restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And if you add all that up, you're talking $5,000-$6,000 a year out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, put that in savings account into financial investments like mutual funds and so forth. In 8 years, you'll have $40,000 to purchase a house with a down payment after interest return.
Mm-hmm.
That's not part of their understanding or their financial literacy. And there's resources out there to go to. For example, my community college colleague, or my city council colleague, Mikey Taylor, he's on TikTok, and he puts out 2-minute videos about financial literacy. Mikey, Mikey Taylor, Taylor. Go to TikTok, follow him, view through his library, and he has great stuff on financial literacy. He himself is a self-made millionaire, married many times over in his early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a difficult formula. Another book to read is called The Millionaire Next Door. A mutual fund went out and wanted to find out what are their millionaires in their mutual fund? What are their needs? What do they like? What's the demographics? And they thought these people would be eating caviar, would be driving Mercedes, Lincoln Continentals, Cadillacs, expensive cars. They would have expensive clothes on.
Mm-hmm.
But after they were doing the interviews, what they found is that the people showed up in blue jeans and a nice button-down shirt.
Right.
They mostly drove a used car that was bought second owner. They rather have chips and a dip instead of the champagne and caviar. They were the ones that clipped coupons, bought things on sale, drove that car until it died. They didn't lease. They paid cash for that vehicle because if they couldn't save up for it, they didn't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But they took the difference of what they made versus what they saved by doing this kind of behavior
Mm-hmm.
and put a little bit in investments. Do you know if you put $500 aside in a Roth IRA starting when you're 18, by the time you're 35, you will be a millionaire and can stop saving. And by the time you're retired at 62, 65, you'll be a millionaire many times over. But it's hard to get people the discipline to put $500 aside every month in the Roth IRA to be financially independent. So Enrique, it doesn't come down to opportunity. It comes down to education and behavior.
Absolutely. And I always say that there's no such thing as product of your environment. I believe that, there are situations in one's environment, but we cannot let it dictate to us the outcome of our environment, that we have to allow ourselves to make our own future. Because when people have that mentality of this is the product of my environment, it just creates excuses for bad behavior. And unfortunately, you see that a lot with the Hispanic community. It's like just because their parents, grandparents, great grandparents were part of a gang doesn't mean that they have to be in a gang. It's like the cycle needs to break. Because
now, from my perspective, I'm reaching out by doing these presentations. You tell me how to educate and change the behavior of the Hispanic population, and I'll do it.
Okay. One of the things that I could recommend, as mayor, is that, try to make yourself available. Like the fact that you have been keeping up with me and reaching out, it shows that you're interested in talking to me, and you don't even know me. That's one thing, because a lot of Hispanics want that familiarity, that connect. When people feel that someone is just another number, it's like they don't feel motivated to reach out. Because Hispanics, you have to really reach out to them in order for them to get motivated to come out of their skin to reach out. That's one.
I experienced that at the free clinic, and after they got to know me for a while, now they come in, they see me, I get big hugs all the way around.
Exactly.
So I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's like they want to feel that you care about them,
Yes,
because that's very important.
Because we're on this earth to help each other get through it. Let's help each other and let's just do it.
Absolutely. Number two is that there needs to be a cultural, not a cultural center, a community center for the youth. I don't know if you have that in Thousand Oaks, but
we have a wonderful community center for teenagers. It's called the Teen Center over by the library in Jan's Road. So yes, we do offer that, but keep going. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
No, it's fine. I have less than a minute. So I just sent you another link. So I don't want to get caught off. So let me pause right now. And
so I'm supposed to leave and then log back in again?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Let me do it.
Let me get out of here. Do it right now.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yes. Number three to the question would be there needs to be recognition for business owners, or just say workers that do well in their job, so that way they can feel appreciated by the city, like give them an award or something like that.
Let me share a thought with you, is that the recognition of the employee should be up to the owner, and they should be the ones to acknowledge them. As far as recognizing a business that's doing well, again, that's really out of the city purview per se. But we can, as part of our city purview, is to provide opportunities to learn how to either open a business here in Thousand Oaks, or if you're already in business, how to take it to the next level. That to me is a better way to go. Mm-hmm. And we have put together here in Thousand Oaks with the Chamber of Commerce. I brought forth the idea, and the CEO of the Chamber, Danielle Borgia, is moving forward with 7 seminars in the module with 30 students It's starting this Friday, March 17, is going once a class a month for the next 7-8 months. And each participant will be assigned a consultant from the Employment Development Coalition. I forget what EDC stands for, where they're going to work with each individual participant. The idea is to help businesses grow and help those that want to start a business in Thousand Oaks. So this is something, if you want to somehow communicate this with those budding entrepreneurs in the Spanish speaking culture, have them attend. Those that are currently in business, have them attend. All this, 7 seminars by leaders in that industry, consultant, all for $100. That is a deal.
That is definitely a deal.
So feel free to share that if you want to put that out there. I can send you over information if you want to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely do.
They've got to be in Thousand Oaks in the Conejo Valley.
Of course, absolutely. And also another thing I would also recommend is that there should be like people from the community that are like doctors, educators, bankers, religious clergy, like volunteering with the youth, giving classes about prevention of, the vices or the dangers of gangs, because again, the youth, many of the youth that I've spoken to feel that a lot of people don't care about them, especially the educated people, and again, it has to do more with social caste. Social class. Social class than economic class than social class, and I feel that could also dispel the myth that rich people don't care about nobody. So I think that would be an alternative to reach out to the young people, where you have people that are from the educated class that are well-to-do, that take a time like on a weekend or once a month to be involved with the young people and to educate them about the dangers of drugs, gangs, and whatever. That you could be where I'm at, but you don't have to sell dope on the street or rob a car to get it. Like, they should be encouraged, not
the
like
beauty,
to
the
be
beauty
encouraged.
of this country, the beauty of the United States of America, is that if you work hard, provide a product or service in the community to fill a market need, live below your means and save some money each month, don't have babies until after you're out of high school and married.
Absolutely.
That's the formula for success in this wonderful country of ours. To your point, is that I find when you try to force mentorship upon a younger person, it's not accepted. But if that young person is working in a environment with other adults, being involved with Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, working in the recreation park system, being employed, now you've got adult mentors that subtly the message is delivered. And they, by emulating those adults around them who are successful, question and answer starts. And it's not going to be all one big answer. This may happen over 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
And I learn from other people around me all the time. But the point being is that for a person to sit there and want to volunteer their time just to sit down with someone who's coming up in the world, it doesn't work because they're not receptive to it. But if that person is in a work environment, on athletic teams, observing their coaches, now you've got an environment where you've got a willing listener. And unless you have that, anything you throw at them, they're not going to listen.
Right.
They're not going to take it in. So that's where work ethic comes in, getting the students to start working at 12, 13, 14 years of age, which they can. That's the way the federal law is written. You can start working at 12, 13 years of age. You don't have to wait till you're 16, 18 years of age.
Right.
That's where it begins. Get involved with scouting, the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA,
Right.
Salvation Army, Goodwill. Have them start working in those environments, and they will have adult mentors that will guide them through life, because they will learn a little bit from each one they come involved with.
Absolutely. But again, like I said, there needs to be the resources for that. Like I made the example of Monterey Park, which is in San Gabriel, predominantly Chinese. They have a Boys and Girls Club that I don't think they really use it, but they have it there, just for principle, because they are doing pretty well there.
Yeah.
But when you go to East LA, they don't have anything there. And a lot of it has to do is that they're not putting resources into those places that have the needs. So it's like I've dealt with a lot of at-risk youth. I've done a lot
Right.
of tutoring because my background is in education.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I would do that sometimes I would have to get out of my comfort zone is that for a lot of people that may not have been raised like me or you, we have to get to their level, in the sense that we have to see them as equals. Because when you see them as equals and you talk to them as equals, they're more willing to open to you and listening to you, and at the same time be willing to open to new ideas. Like I could tell you a quick story where I was tutoring some at risk youth over in Hollywood, and they were very difficult people. Not the kind of people that I would associate with, but there were a lot of students there that they wanted to learn and they cared, but because of where they come from, it's human nature for us to prejudge people without even getting to know them first. So, I didn't look at them like, hey, I'm better than you. I live better than you, because they can feel it. Even if you don't speak it, they can feel it. So I think it's very important that even for those that don't have access to boys and girls clubs, or because like I said, there's many places in the United States where they don't have these resources. They don't have it. It's not because they don't want to be in those places, they don't have it. So this is where freelance comes
Let
in.
me
This is
share a
when we-
thought with you here, Enrique.
Sure.
Is that Thousand Oaks, we've got the Boys and Girls Club, we have the YMCA, we have all those resources in the Recreation and Parks Division. We have a program that was started by a former police chief here, Tim Hagel, who has what's called Safe Passages, where we have 2 gangs here in Thousand Oaks. And he, with a lot of contributions, was able to start up a after-school program for these at-risk youth whose mom and dad are working until 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. And the gang members prey on these 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds who go home to the apartment empty. And then the gang members start becoming their family. They start telling them how wonderful they are and that they're valued. And then the gang becomes their family instead of
Right.
mom and dad. So what Tim Hagel did as chief of police, now he continues his work as a retired officer or a sheriff's deputy, is that from 3 o'clock to 5, 6, they're either in the school or in an offsite location where they get tutored. They have athletic activities. They have adult mentors around them. And the idea is that if the gangs do not have people coming in to join the gangs go away.
Of course.
But he did a next step was that the gang members usually live in one of the 2 apartments that we have in our city. And the agreement was with the property owner of the apartment. Leases were rewritten that if the police have to come out 3 times to that same apartment for the same issue, that they will be immediately evicted. Now you've got buy-in from the parent that when the first time the police come out to deal with their son or daughter, they're motivated because they don't want to get evicted because they're going to have to find somewhere else to live. And it's going to be very difficult for them to find a place to live again in Thousand Oaks.
Right.
And this program is very successful in that they're reducing the size of the gangs because they've got the children after school going to the safe places, get better grades because of tutoring, keep up their athletic and artistic abilities, and the parents have buy-in because there's a penalty to the parent if they are not on their kid. So that said, let's take it to the next level. You're telling me some areas do not have a Boys and Girls Club as Boys and Girl Scouts.
No YMCA or anything like that.
The community needs to step up and have leadership, and the parents come together to start that. These communities have churches. In the churches, you can have Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. You can start after-school programs. This is something the community needs to do.
Absolutely.
Stop looking for the teat of government to suckle in order to find money to do this. We have done this here in Thousand Oaks. The people come together and a little bit from everyone goes a long way, and we value it. So that's what I encourage those other communities to do that have no Boys and Girls Club, Boys and Girl Scouts, and so forth. I guarantee you have churches there.
Right. And
Go
unfortunately,
in with the churches.
unfortunately, in my opinion, I don't think the churches do enough, because I think a lot of churches are not there for the right purpose. They're just there to live off the congregants. Not all of them, a lot of them do.
But yet, if the people, the congregants come up and say, I want to start an after-school program, we're going to bring in some college students who are in the education program to give them tutoring experience and a safe place for these kids to be before mom and dad come home after a hard day's work to pick them up. We want to keep them off the streets, off drugs, keep them out of gangs. And that pastor says, no, we don't want to do it. And then that goes out to the congregation and they move to a church that does do it. You've got a market force here where that pastor may say, you know what, we're going to start doing that because I'm losing people here and we're going to have to close this church.
Because that's also another thing that I've seen in places that are predominantly Hispanic. You have a lot of churches, but you don't have a lot of services. But in places that are wealthier, you don't have churches. You don't really have many different religions, because primarily is because the people and the community are doing that. But like I've seen, I don't have a problem with religion. I'm a person of faith myself, but what I've seen in places where there is a lot of poverty, especially with there's Hispanic people, the churches, in my opinion, doesn't matter what church it is, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not looking after the flock. And if that was the case, you wouldn't have the gangs as you do today. And
I really can't blame that on the churches. I blame that on the parents not keeping their kids busy after school or having safe places, and the churches can be some of those safe places. But also, Enrique, to your point, you're also referring to service organizations like Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions,
Right.
Optimists. These are business people who come together, pool their money to do the things you're asking. Now, go start a Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions, Optimists in those communities, and they may already be there, but they're not being accessed by various families. Just that lack of ignorance. They didn't know they exist.
right.
The good work they do. So share with me how to get it to them. I'll be glad to do so. But I know in Thousand Oaks, we've got a very strong nonprofit, service-oriented, religious organizations that benefits our community because our people have three qualities to them. First, they take care of their families.
Right.
Second, they look after their neighbors. And third, they are involved in their community. And they care about their community to step up and help where they can. And a little bit of effort on everybody's part goes a really long way. So much so that when a child is in trouble with the police for whatever reason,
Right.
you could go arrest the child, process them, and then release them back to their parents. Or you can take the next step where the police are over there with the social worker saying to the parent, okay, what support do you need to keep this kid on track? Because if we take care of this now, they're not going to be dealing with felonies down the road.
Right.
Do you follow the difference? That's what our police do. That's what we ask them to do, and they do it.
Oh, that's important. That's important. And again, in Spanish United, like we also do a lot of outreach work for the homeless. We do a lot of intake with a lot of people. Like me and my mother in particular, we do a lot of outreach work over in the Atwater Village, Tahunga area. And when I have done intakes with many people, like you say, a lot of it has to do because of ignorance. And also a lot of them have told me that the reason why they've ended up displaced primarily is because they don't really have the protections as other tenants do, in terms of rent control, in terms of not being bullied by the landlord. And at the same time, when they need to get services, a lot of them don't have transportation because a lot of them, they can't drive for whatever reason. So also a lot of it has to do is that many of them don't have any other social safety net, and that is a real problem.
Well, let's take this apart, Enrique, for what we just shared. I'm going to give you a different perspective on it.
Be my guest.
Public transportation is essential to get people around. And that's just a given in any city, and that's up to city government to do so. Second, you talk about rent control. Rent control, if you look at economically, actually makes housing less available and more expensive. Because if a investor is not able to make a certain rate of return on building an apartment complex, it won't get built because rent control is in place. Plus, when you have rent control, you can't increase the tenant's rent, but yet the owner of the building, all their other expenses go up. Trash pickup, repair and maintenance like gardening service, painting the building, air conditioning goes down, heater goes down, has to be replaced. So the rent control sounds nice until you start going through the flow of money and you realize that's not the way to go. And that's been shown by a number of studies. To having a landlord not be responsive to the tenant, that tenant responds by moving out. And if enough people move out, they can't sustain the building, and maybe they'll provide the services necessary.
That's easier said than done, because many people have tried to do that. And,
Yep.
it's like many people cannot just say, okay, I'm going to move out of this building because the landlord doesn't do his job.
Well,
and whatever.
part of it
They
again,
cannot.
but then part of it is the landlord may not be charging enough to afford those repairs that are needed.
Mhm.
But if they charge the rent, then they can't afford to be there. And it's a push
Mhm.
pull, and it's a tough situation.
Exactly.
I agree, Enrique.
Because
But
many people that are homeless is not because they did it because of their own fault. Primarily it's because they're not able to pay their rent, because they cannot, get a higher paying job. So I don't think it's fair for the people that are homeless, that are out on the street, that are productive people, that are productive citizens. And then a lot of people, and again, I'm not mentioning, politics, but you have those that like to complain, like you say, that, they complain about something, but then they didn't do anything to resolve it. Like, you have people that when they see homeless people, they don't want to see it. It's an eyesore. But when you ask them, okay, what are the solutions for us to resolve it in a proactive way that benefits everyone? Their first response is from everybody. It doesn't matter if it's left or right. It's not my problem. It's not my problem. It's not my problem. That's the problem. When people have this mentality, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. It's not my problem. It becomes a problem for everybody. Because right now, homelessness in the United States is not just subscribed to one area. Now it's everywhere. And now it's not just a social issue, it's becoming a national security issue. Like, if you have shanty towns that are forming and forming and forming and forming, that could create a lot of instability. And that's what's happening in many places in the United States, not just in California, but in many other major cities. So,
Enrique,
we
let
be
me
my guest, be my
let me
guest.
pause with your question here, because I
Sure.
want to come back and clarify a few things.
Sure.
My work when I was in my internship was working with the homeless population. We do rotations at the Goodwill and Salvation Army clinics in downtown LA.
Mhm.
And this is going back 37, 38 years ago.
Right.
In Thousand Oaks, I volunteer my time in the Westminster Free Clinic here. And that's where the underserved, but also some homeless do come for treatment. And I talk to these folks. In my practice in Thousand Oaks, we have a service called Lutheran Social Services that provides their EBT cards, their medical exams, cell phone, things of that nature. And I talk to the homeless that hang out around the area and get to know them on a first name basis.
Mhm.
I've also worked as a reserve officer with the Los Angeles Police Department for 8 years.
Mhm.
It's where I get to know the homeless situation. Let me walk you through how we got homeless here in California. Observation as well as studies show that the population you're talking about, which are mom and dad lost their job, or they had some major financial setback and they didn't have cash reserve to carry them for 6 months while they were recovering from a surgery or hurt their back, whatever the case may be, that's only 10 to 20% of the homeless out there. The other 80% are the ones that are drug addictive and or mentally ill.
Mhm.
Now you ask yourself, when did this all start happening? And I'll tell you, look at policy change at that time. There was a situation that came up where our prisons were overcrowded, but we had low crime because the people that were in prison, in our state prisons and in our county jails, did commit crimes.
Right.
But when became overcrowded, the state legislature did not want to build more prisons. So they became overcrowded to the point where Jerry Brown and the legislature were being sued for inadequate medical care in our prisons, and second, overpopulation.
Mhm.
So to his credit, Jerry Brown was able to get the medical care up to snuff. In fact, you got better medical care in our prisons, state prisons, than you did in our local hospitals.
That's true.
So that was addressed. But the other was that Jerry Brown tried to address the overpopulation by moving the state population back into the county jails. And that was Prop 198, I believe it was. Or no, sorry, AB 109. AB 109, Assembly Bill AB 109 allowed state prisoners to be moved into county jails. So that reduced the
Was that
population.
back in 2010, I believe, or no?
I don't know the exact date, but it was AB 109.
I remember
Jerry
hearing
Brown.
about that. I remember that I voted on that proposition, not on that one, but I remember hearing about it.
Well, it's Assembly Bill. You didn't vote on that one. That
Okay.
was an Assembly Bill. So
Okay.
that moved and reduced the prison populations for the state into the county jail. Then it was still not meeting the numbers. It was going up to the Supreme Court to force the release of the prisoners. Unfortunately, Jerry Brown at that time was within 1,000 prisoners to be in compliance The Supreme Court was given incorrect information and said to California, you've got to start releasing these people. That was where Jerry Brown turned to a then attorney or district attorney George Gascon
Yes.
in San Francisco, and said, would you please write Prop 47 and 57, which he did. And what that did was move what were felonies before down to misdemeanors, which would release them from jail, from prison. It also, unfortunately, released a lot of people with mental illness and drug addiction back on the streets. And the explanation we got from Governor Brown was that these people have committed nonviolent crimes. They need to be put back into society again so they can be rehabilitated and brought back into society. Sounds really good, doesn't it? But the cities were not set up to take in all these people that used to be housed in our prisons, in our county jails, because in those facilities, these drug addicted, mentally ill folks had food, shelter, and medication. All Props 47 and 57 did was release them onto our city streets who are not prepared to deal with it. And now they have no food, no shelter, no medication, a very inhumane situation to be in. And that was all to reduce our prison population. That's where the homeless came from. So now the cities are all tasked with the idea of how do we address the issue of homelessness when we're not set up and prepared to do so. All we're doing right now, Enrique, is a Band-Aid situation where we provide the food, we give them a cell phone, they live on the streets, they poop in front of people's businesses, chase away people's customers.
Right.
They go out of business. They're doing drugs on the street. The homeless camps are lawlessness, where the one with the biggest fists and the loudest voice is the law that exists there.
Right.
Women are being raped. They're being prostituted out. AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases are being transmitted on a daily, if not minute by minute basis. That's not a humane situation.
Of course not.
So it solved the prison situation, but yet it hurt and actually killed many people now on the streets. Now, our prisons weren't meant to be mental institutions.
No.
Nor were they meant to be drug rehabilitation facilities, but we had them in safe places, and we could have actually done that and provide mental health therapy, drug rehab, and vocational training, and transition them out of prison by putting them into temporary transitional homes with social workers to monitor them. We didn't do that. Instead, we released them from prison and say, go get them.
Right.
So that's why they wound up on yours and my doorsteps in inhumane situations.
Right.
So if you want to have another lengthy 1 hour conversation, how I would like to address this, more than happy, but that's where the homeless came from.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. And also the fact that a lot of mental institutions were closed back in the 80s, that also played a part, because prior to the homeless crisis, in the 50s, 60s, people had mental institutions where the mentally ill that were not criminals, that couldn't function, they were able to go.
Let me share the history on that. Hold on.
Sure, be my guest.
The mental institutions in California started closing in the late 50s, early 60s with then Governor Pat Brown, Jerry Brown's father. And they started closing them because they were not cost effective. When you have 5 people in an institution for 100, the overhead's huge. So it started back with Pat Brown. In the 1967, there was a movie that came out called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which showed of people that should not have been institutionalized, but were against their will. Well, that movie came out, won Academy Awards, and here in California, a law was put through. It went through 77-1 that said that you cannot institutionalize someone against their will. So Governor Reagan signed it into law because he knew it was going to be vetoed. The closing of mental hospitals continued all the way through with every governor since Pat Brown, all the way through to Pete Wilson, with the last one being closed, which was here in Camarillo, which is now Cal State Channel Island. So it wasn't the 80s that shut down mental institutions. That was started in late 50s, early 60s, and continued all the way through to Pete Wilson's era as governor. So now you've got a law in the books that says families cannot intervene on behalf of a family member to get them the mental health therapy that they need. Mikey Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, council member here in Thousand Oaks. His brother Jimmy, when he was in his 20s, had a head trauma that gave him mental illness. His brother Jimmy lives on the streets of Thousand Oaks and isn't drug addicted. His parents are excited when he gets arrested because they know he's in jail, safe, gets 3 meals a day, and not on drugs. But the family cannot intervene because of this 1967 law supported by and encouraged by One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to intervene and get him the help that he needs because families aren't allowed to do so. So in many ways, that law needs to be changed because you have loving families who want to intervene. And if you've worked with the homeless with mental illness, when you get their brain chemistry normalized through medication and or diet and or vitamins,
absolutely,
they wind up saying to you, thank you, I was out of my head, I didn't know where I was. Unfortunately, they feel stable enough that they stop taking their medications and they become unstable.
Right. And that is a problem when also it's not just medication, but also poor diet that could contribute to mental illness because of the additives, because of many things. And and that's another thing that I educate the Hispanic community is that diet is very important. Like, did you know that after African Americans, Hispanics are the second largest minority with the worst health problems? Like Santa Ana, California is in the entire country with the highest obesity and it's majority Hispanic.
One of the things we do at Westminster Free Clinic is we have a large auditorium at the United Methodist Church that we use. And every Wednesday, they have classes there for the moms that mostly attend on diet. And they talk to them about how to set up a healthy diet plan for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then the moms go over to a table looking at the newspaper with all the different foods that are listed there in the newspaper and all the sales and so forth. And they're asked to cut out and create a plan for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the family. And the dietitian will go through it in Spanish and explain to them what they did right or what to do better. That's part of the education that you're describing here of eating healthy. It comes down to education. And if they've got it, they'll do it.
Of course.
But there's something else that you alluded to that I wanted to share with you as something else with the homeless, but escapes me right now. But we can come back to it later.
Yeah, I believe I think what had to do that a lot of them that are out on the street is because they couldn't pay their rent and, you know, they're not on drugs. They're just regular people that got up on hard times.
I agree. That's 10% of the population. And I, as a council member and mayor, I'm working on finding a location where they've got 6, 7, 8 months to get back up on their feet, get some savings, get a job. I'm working on it. Our problem is we can't find a place in our city to put it. And that's the challenge. So I'm working on it. Haven't come up with an answer yet on where to put it, but we've got the model of what we want to put in there. And these are for the families, the moms, dads, kids living out of the car. They need a safe place to live, put a roof over their head, and get back up on your feet by working, get a savings account. Oh, here's what I'm going to share with you. One of my patients is a clinical or psychologist, shares with me the story about how our policies in government actually keep the schizophrenic population where they are on the street. She says they will come into the clinic that she works at. They will get free medications, free counseling, get them stable. They get a job. They get an apartment. But if you earn over a certain amount and have it in your bank account, you now lose your free counseling and free medications, but you don't make enough to afford those. So therefore, they don't come into the clinic for counseling medications. They become unstable, lose their job, don't make enough money to pay rent, and they lose their apartment. Now they're back on the street again.
Right.
We in government have created a closed loop cycle to keep them in that situation. That needs to change, and that's a policy level above my pay grade.
That's awesome because, you know, that becomes a revolving door because, you know, there are people that do not want to be in poverty. They really don't.
Yes.
But, you know, when you have these loopholes, many people are not able to get out of it. And that's the danger that I see with many people that are just 1 or 2 paychecks away from being on the street. Because if they, like you say, if they make a certain amount, if it's too high or too little, even by 1 digit, they could lose their benefits. And
yes.
You know, there again, I believe primarily in a social safety net, not permanent, but it's there in case people need it. Like if you look at the example of Norway, I was in Norway last year. Norway has been criticized by the far right as being a communist country. Believe me, it's far from it. But they have a system in place that everyone pays high taxes, of course, but people don't have this concern or fear that if I get sick or if I whatever, I'm going to end up on the street. And even if they have to recover temporarily, they don't have to worry about, where they're going to be. It's not there for people to be there forever, but it's there when they need it. And
So
that's
giving them a hand instead of a handout.
exactly. And that's something
Enrique,
that we really need.
do you know what the population of Norway is?
6 million people.
It's smaller than Los Angeles.
That's true.
How many are in the United States?
Norwegians?
No. How many people are in the United States?
Oh, 450
Close.
million.
350, 325 million. Okay.
But it's a lot.
And that's the point I'm making, is that people always look at these smaller countries of 5-6 million people and think we can extrapolate that model. I can guarantee you if Thousand Oaks of 127,000 people, we provide an excellent quality of life because we are close to the people we serve. My neighbors, people on the street, they know I'm the mayor. They make a phone call, they call me, they've got a concern. They send me an email, they've got a concern. I get it to city staff and it's addressed immediately. In Los Angeles, with 6 million people and the huge bureaucracy they have, they can't provide the services. Too many layers of bureaucracy.
And red tape.
Exactly. So I have a real hard time extrapolating what they do in Norway to try to do that here in the United States, because we've got a completely different population level and laws and standards and culture than what they do in Norway.
Oh, of course, absolutely. But it just amazes me how they're able to have a good society. But again, population does play a part.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But it's also, again, the culture that's there where they emphasize family. They say, you know what, we're going to give you a short time to get your act together and get back into life again and get back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the United States, in my opinion, many of our social programs are not a hand up, but a hand out. And people get dependent on that. And that's what creates more poverty. And that keeps people where they are because they're comfortable. They got their needs met. They're not seeking to be more.
Right.
And I rather provide services to help people in need, but with an avenue of, these are not going to be forever. You need to actually stand up, join life again, and engage.
Right. And it has to be done in a way where the people feel that they could do it. We can't just, hey, we'll provide you, but we can't look them down, because that's the problem that America has. We tend to look down on people that are less fortunate. Not everybody, but a lot of people do, and that does need to
Right.
change.
I can't necessarily relate to that concept because I don't do that with the people that I meet. But again, you're telling me that that's been your experience, and it's a valid experience, and I can't participate in that experience because that's not the way I look at people, nor have I seen that.
Right, of course. And again, like I said, it's not everyone, but a lot of people do feel that. But I feel that, if that changes in that aspect, I think a lot of people would try to do better, or at least make an effort to.
Well, just to conclude, my mission and purpose in public policy as a mayor and city council member here in Thousand Oaks is to provide an environment so people have a safe place to raise their family with quality education, great opportunities to be in parks, our malls, shopping centers, being able to walk their kids down the street without fear of being attacked, provide an environment where we're meeting the needs for not only today, but in the future. And that's one of the things that I'm always looking at. What can we do better to serve the people of Thousand Oaks? And I think we've done a good job, because we've had a problem of a lot of people from Los Angeles want to move to Thousand Oaks, and it's a desirable place to live. And I'm taking that as a compliment. And it's because of the terrific city staff that we have in Thousand Oaks, from the city manager, city attorney on down. Our city staff does a great job of servicing the people of Thousand Oaks. And it's because of that, we're a responsive government and we're close to the people.
That's very good. I wanted to say, Mayor, thank you so much for being on the show. I know that we took a little bit extra time, but we covered everything and all the questions that we needed. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And when I am finished, I will email you and text you the link, and you could share it with whoever you want to share it with. And we'll definitely keep in contact to have further conversations in the future, or if you want to call me for anything, I'm definitely here to serve.
I would like to, because again, that school choice for parents, I think is going to come to fruition, and I'd appreciate anything you can do to help move that forward, because I think that's a game changer for a lot of parents and kids.
Sure, absolutely. I could definitely attend one of them and give my feedback.
Love it. Thank you, sir.
Have yourself a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye-bye.